Hi, everybody. Harry here to talk about the code of conduct that the Supreme Court released, is probably the best word, yesterday. All right. Everyone's familiar with the series of black eyes and scandals, mainly involving Justice Clarence Thomas, secondarily involving Justice Samuel Alito, but others as well that have really created a hue and cry to have some code of conduct applicable to the Supreme Court, which right now it seemed to have nothing. I say seemed because of the way the Supreme Court is positioning this new code. So you could say the headline here is the court recognized it had to be responsive. The drumbeat was really loud. Probably Chief Justice Roberts marshaled a unanimous, not just consensus, for doing this. So it shows some modicum of responsiveness and accountability to the very strong protests and chain of stories, especially from ProPublica. That's maybe about the best you could say. Now let's go to the content. First, for my hedging on released. So the court makes a big thing of positioning this as constraints that have always been there, but we're just codifying them. So they say, we don't have an actual, haven't had before a written code, but they've long had the equivalent of common law ethics rules. That means, they're not in a statute, but they apply. And so the absence of a code has led in recent years to the misunderstanding that the justices of this court regard themselves as unrestricted by any ethics rules. This and the entire thing, but the preamble makes so clear it was very carefully negotiated and to get agreement from all nine, including especially Thomas and Alito. And there's a lowest common denominator here because they obviously are very, very, very sensitive to any suggestion that they've been in violation before. So in particular, they want to say, oh, we've never said we're not governed by ethics and the like. And then the very notion that they're just codifying. You can be sure that Thomas and Alito did a fine-tooth comb to have their defenses ready, that there's not an item in this 9-page or whatever statement or compilation of other constraints that would make them be out of compliance. So, that's Roberts is able to marshal a total unanimous 9-0 court to get behind this, but that means it's a very, very tame document. All right, so that's just the content of it, and the argument that I think the justices have been careful to embed here, that there's nothing that they've no way they've run afoul of it, though people will make some suggestions. Senator Whitehouse, who's been probably the biggest agitator here or sounding the alarm bell about a lot of what he sees as sort of problems in the whole sort of Supreme Court and surrounding culture, including the Federalist Society, has said, well, here's a couple things. Here's something that Alito maybe didn't do right under this code. Here's something that Thomas maybe didn't do. But it doesn't leave room, because they were purposeful not to leave room for any real charges about what's happened before. All right, so that's the content. The biggest thing, though, and the thing that is making all Supreme Court watchers be at best ambivalent about this is there's no enforcement mechanism. I mean, that's the whole deal, is who would enforce it? How would it be enforced? So it's still to the Supreme Court to say what violates and doesn't. And it seems very clear that the 9 of them At least some among them, again, probably starting with Thomas and Alito, were dead set against any enforcement mechanism. Now, contrast this with what happens to all other judges in the federal system. There is an enforcement mechanism. They have a statute that says what they can do and can't do. And if somebody thinks that they violated that statute, they can bring a complaint. I believe it goes to the chief judge of the circuit and the circuit court. If necessary, somebody can be appointed to investigate the facts. After the investigation, if the judge has been found to have acted unethically, there can be reprimands and censures and, real teeth. And so what White House predictably and other court critics came out immediately to say is, where's the enforcement mechanism? How can anybody actually, go to the trouble of challenging the court in this way? And the short answer, I'm just looking for White House's specific statement, but, essentially he's saying that's, where the rubber hits the road. So everybody was like, okay, it's a good first step, etc. And they think and hope it's a kind of dialogue that has been initiated. I'm not sure there's going to be much of a dialogue here. And in particular, when there's any effort to make it seem as if anyone other than the Supreme Court is going to police this code, I think you're going to see a pretty strong pushback. And remember, power of judicial review. They could actually, if Congress could pass a statute and the Supreme Court might find that it's unconstitutional, violation of separation of powers, of course, that raises the question, well, how can you do it for other judges then? So the tug of war here is going to go on. The revelations about Justice Thomas and Justice Alito, among others, are out there, and that's not going away. And the critics of this plan are going to say, basically, it's sort of well and good. Nothing new, but, the codification is well and good, but how is it supposed to be enforced? So glass half full or half empty, or, it's one of those situations where at least there's some responsiveness from a court that has seemed to circle the wagons to date, but not anything that critics can say really gives teeth to the code of conduct. That was probably a foregone conclusion, though, to get the unanimous sign-on of all 9 justices. So that's where things stand. I think you can expect Senator Whitehouse, among others, to push back in some way, but will not, I think, unlikely to find a willing partner for dialogue here in the Supreme Court. I think they've said their piece and intend to stick with that. We'll see. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.